Let's talk offense, guys. I want to talk about sequencing plays in a certain way. I want to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles becoming more efficient, and I'm going to talk about the offense, I don't know, looking like an offense that is giving defenses, or opposing defenses, if you will, some problems. I want to start off talking about what I saw when I went back and I looked at the Matt LaFleur kind of offense in Green Bay and kind of the way they were sequencing plays, and in particular, the things that I were looking at were under center snaps. It's where most of the time what I'm looking at is a 5 to 7 step drop. They're trying to heavily sell the run, but they're attacking vertically. And I wanted to see what the offense looked like there. Now, to start with, what I'm going to tell you, and some of you guys might be like, oh man, it's not static, is it? We want a more dynamic offense. Just hang on, guys. You have to understand it's about the full picture. It's a lot of 2x2 sets, guys. They played a lot out of 2x2 sets under center, and that's for a specific reason. Remember when I told you guys that offensively 2x2 sets are kind of like what quarters are defensively. So when you do this, if you're trying to sell the run, you're going to see a lot of like things that resemble double winged formations, or you're going to have an inline guy with another guy that you're trying to make them think you're going to come across formation and try to kick out on a block there. Like you're going to do these type of sets and formations that make the defense hesitate for a split second, thinking that it's run. That's what you see on film. And what I went to kind of start this whole thing off, like, well, what led you into this direction, guys, to like kind of watch film on this? What I watched and what led me in this direction, what I saw was the EPA per dropback. So when I went and I took a look at Jordan Love's EPA per dropback, he ranked like number 2 overall in the NFL with like a plus 0.20, like 20% basically. He had a really high EPA per dropback, and I was like, okay, EPA basically tells you something here. It tells you that they were hitting big plays on the season. Like anytime that he dropped back, there was a high chance, a high likelihood he was going to absolutely put the ball in a position to where they could score. The other thing I wanted to go look for was just, well, how often were they taking deep shots? Once again, number 2 overall. Jalen Hurts was number 1. Number 2 was Jordan Love. And I was like, okay, like now it does make a little bit more sense in terms of the coaching and what they're trying to do, right? The fact they brought over their tight ends coach, running back coach, kind of coming in here, guy who's played around, he's even coached receivers before, to kind of work a little bit with the run game. And, obviously being the tight end coach, it's going to be really important the way that they use tight ends for setting up these play action shots, the run game, pass pro, all those things. That does kind of make sense now, right? They went out there, and I know that, when you look at Chris Cooper, it's really and honestly coming out of like Vic Fangio having some, familiarity with this guy. But we also know that Sean Mannion has familiarity with him. And even Nick has guys in his coaching circle who have worked with him before and know him pretty well. They know him as a player and a coach. So, I mean, like when I called him when they first hired him, like the most like, this is like the safest hire I've ever seen a coaching staff make. I understand why they did it, because you're replacing a legend in Stoutland. But like, yeah, I mean, you see this Kevin O'Connell. You look down there, J.J. McCarthy's the number 4, I want to say, overall guy in terms of like deep throw percentages. It makes sense, right? So you can see the foundations of this offense kind of coming together, which is they're still going to try to, attack in between the numbers. I don't want people to lose sight of that. I do think that Jalen Hurts in his offense has to be a lot better in the intermediary area, that 11 to 19-yard range in between the numbers. A lot of people are talking about the hash marks. I'm going to tell you the secret about the hash marks, guys. Not a lot of people throw in between the hash marks, period. League-wide. You're not going to get a ton of throws there. And those who overthrow the ball in between the hash marks, they tend to turn the ball over a lot. It's really in between the numbers is what you're looking for. You're looking for that space that's in between the numbers. And that's not always in breaking routes, by the way. You can have drag routes and quick outs. You can have all these things that are technically, if they throw the ball and it's in between the numbers, it counts. So you can hitch, you can curl, you can do all these things that are still in between the numbers that could technically have like an outside lean to them, right? Things like that, guys. So when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, like they throw the ball deep, they take their deep shots. And the other thing I'm looking at here is that they were very effective. They were scoring on these deep shots. It's very obvious. And Jordan Love was pretty decent actually between the 11 to 19 yard in between the numbers in terms of intermediary passing game in between the numbers. These are things that we got to get better at, right? You look at average separation. For all the talk that they keep talking about Jalen Hurts not throwing into tight windows, well, look at his tight window throw rate, guys. And yeah, I got to disagree with the stupid-ass narrative. Look at, average separation when he throws the ball. Middle of the league, tied with Jordan Love, 3.5 yards. So He throws more tight window throws than the general population of quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's throwing at the league average for average separation. Something about this narrative freaking stinks. Something is not passing the smell test about the damn narrative that they've been building for the last couple of years here. And the truth be told, yes, I do think there are times that he's not throwing the ball into tight coverage, and I do think it has to be expanded upon. But I also think that that was at the directive of the actual coaching staff. Over 2 offensive coordinators, the same head coach, there's a direction there to where they didn't want to put the ball in harm's way, and I do think they got to lighten the ropes up there. You got to be willing to live with a little bit more risk with the football, both quarterback and coach. It's not a singular thing, but when you look at the league averages, I'm just going to call it out, man. Some of these dudes weren't getting separation. If he's throwing into more tight windows than everyone else, he's throwing at 3.5 yard separation, which is right in the average of the NFL, but his target rates are down. And I mean, come on, man. Read the tea leaves of what they did this offseason. The coaching staff they just hired, right? The players they just brought in to get guys who can uncover in between the damn numbers. I'm just going to leave it where it is. I'm not saying the shit will be successful, but I know what the damn tea leaves are pointing to here. There's a certain player that I'm not even going to get into it. We've talked too much about this guy. All right, I want to take you in and I want to show you a little bit about what I'm seeing from the passing game. The first thing I want to show you guys is when you're looking at under center snaps is the fact that you're looking at what the drop step's going to be here. So you're looking at a 1-step or 3-step pop. So when I say 1-step, 3-step pop, guys, what I'm talking about is a really quick developing passing play. Like you're hitting 1 step and you're pulling up immediately and throwing the ball, right? Even under center, you can have very quick developing plays like that. 3-step pop means that it's probably still within that 10-yard radius, right? You're probably not getting very often to your intermediate game. Like that first read is definitely quick. Versus like a 5 to 7-step drop from under center. 5 to 7-step drop, you're probably challenging the intermediate area into the deep area. You're probably not going to mess with a lot of the short stuff, the short game, unless you're throwing to basically the field side, right? I mean, if a player's got to cover more space, that gives you more time for them to, even if it's a shorter developing route, there's more time to get to the development and tie it to the quarterback's footwork. So, like, it's things like that, right? You're not going to see a shit ton of 7-step drops to where the first read or the primary read is going to be a quick out under, like a 10-yard quick out to the boundary. Like, that footwork doesn't make sense, guys. Like, you got to look at shit like that and understand what's happening here. On this first play, this is just vertical stretch, guys. This is a vertical stretch play. And I want to explain to you what I mean by vertical stretch and what that term even, like, why it's even important to understand that, guys. When you hear someone say vertical stretch, which you should probably ask the next question is like, when you say vertical stretch, guys, are you classifying it into the high-low, or are you classifying it into the 3-level vertical stretch game? High-low, just like it sounds like, guys, right? When they run smash, right? Where you got a short developing route and then something deeper behind it, and you're trying to put a cornerback on the outside in conflict, right? To where if you're running a 3-level stretch, guys, then you got a short route, you got an intermediate route, you got a deep route. Don't make these things harder than they sound. I know we like to use a lot of words as coaches and stuff. I don't, guys, a lot of this stuff, as you learn it, it's not as confusing as they try to make it sound sometimes. What I'm looking to tell you right here is that you're looking at a 3-level vertical stretch play. And by the way, I thought it was drawn up quite nicely. I think this was a very well drawn up play. If you break this up by its sides of the field, so like say you got a quarterback that's half field reading. On one side of your field, you got a receiver that has a decision to make. To me, this looks like an option route thing to where he could run, kind of a go route, or he could sit it down on like a deep comeback kind of route, if you will. So he's got that opportunity, depending on the way safety is playing this, to either sit it down or extend it in terms of like a true vertical threat. And in this particular situation, he's basically running a deep comeback, if you will. And then you got a flat route to that. So you're high-lowing to that side. On the opposite side, and this just shows you the complexity of offenses, what do you got here? You got post. You got a post followed by a flat route. High-low. You're high-lowing it. But the reason that they're going to categorize this into the 3-level is that deep sit-down is now challenging the intermediate area right around the 20-yard mark, right? And then you got one that's above 20 yards, which is that deep post kind of action there to where they're trying to hold the safety. That 3-level, even though if you divided it up by the field, you're high-lowing to one side, you're high-lowing to the other, the safety dictated that to just not be like a pure high-low read, and it turned it into essentially like a 3-level to where the receiver sat it down, kind of right inside the intermediate area zone for things. And that's just to basically put a vertical stretch on the defense, guys. That's all this is. There were a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of mistakes on Jordan Love's film in terms of passes above 20 yards inside of the not hash marks, but inside the numbers, if you will, guys. His stats simply were 10 of 27 for 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 65.1 NFL passer rating. You could see clearly on the film. I'm going to show you today. He missed some opportunities, man. There were definitely opportunities there that he missed. Jalen's pretty good at this. He didn't throw the ball quite as much in terms of being above 20 yards inside the numbers, but he was 8 of 15, which is pretty damn good, to be honest with you. That's 283 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 138.2 passer rating. This is the part that I'm kind of excited to see them do more. And it's not just the shit over 20 yards. It's also the intermediate area, because I think that's where Jalen really needs to improve his game, is in the intermediate area in between the numbers. But the things they can do from that Y position, when you hear about, like, them talking about Y crossers and shit like that, guys, that's the area that I'm excited to see this offense get expanded upon the most, but also utilizing where I think Jalen's special at, which is above 20 yards in between the numbers. This guy, he was cooking, to be honest. There's a lot of vertical stretch on this, on the tape here, guys, and there was a lot of missed opportunities. There's another one to where it's a very similar route concept. This time they're running the go route on the opposite side, and it has to do with the coverage that was dictated there. I think it may be this play. I can't remember off the top of my head, guys. I'll run the tape for you, but on one of the actual plays, they ended up giving them like kind of a look that would make you think maybe they were going to play quarters or something like that, but in the end, it turned out to be what I think is a cover 6, which is quarter, half. So because he had the half-field defender, he ran him off on the go route, tried to jam him on the line, then he pushed vertical onto that safety. And then you had kind of this deep kind of coming back in kind of post route. And you could see, even on that one where they're running the deep post route, I think they even had one after that to where it was almost like a scissor action to where they ran a deep post, and then behind that deep post, they kind of ran almost like a corner route. He flattens the route out, and they when you flatten the route out, guys, you're trying to prevent a defender from either getting under the ball, basically. You're trying to get them so they can't undercut you normally, is why you flatten a route. On this particular situation, I don't think that's why he flattened the route. I think he flattened the route because the ball was kind of dovetailing in the air on him and it hung. So he flattened the route to make it to where the defensive back couldn't get in to make a play. But you can see, like, it just depends upon the way that the safety's playing and how they want to play this. And, like, there was definitely some opportunities missed, right? They hit a big play to the tight end there. Excited to see Dallas Goedert. Excited to see, like, Eli Stowers and these guys being able to be utilized like this. Even receivers. What you're really talking about is the Y position, right? Slot. Whether it's the inside slot or the outside slot guy. If it's a 3x1, 1x3, whatever, you know what I mean? You look at Mekhi Lemon, you look at Eli Stowers, you look at Dallas Goedert, you look at these dudes that play inside the interior. Even Devontae Smith plays a shit ton, at least he did last year, of slot receiver. These guys that can play your slot and can be effective there on these kind of, these looks that are giving them these one-on-one coverages and allowing them to kind of go to work there, whether they're routing them up with good footwork or they're just physically imposing and intimidating and just have a huge catch radius, and it's just hard for these people to make up for it when they're being isolated on them on vertical plays. I think that's what you're going to see here, man. And once again, there is a piece of tape on the film to where you can see Jordan Love makes a mistake with the ball. He overthrows the player. It was definitely there. I think it was Matthew Golden's kind of streaking down there on, looks like probably a post route kind of ordeal here. But same thing, man. Like, you have these vertical shots, they're there, and they were missed. I want to talk about one route concept that I kept seeing on the tape from these guys. Okay? On the tape, one of the route concepts that I caught on Green Bay quite a bit, it's this idea of what we would call a 7 flat. So this is a 7-corner flat route concept, okay? They run it from a specific look. They run what they call, really and honestly, they call it a flag route. So a flag route means you kind of stem it almost like you're going to run you could look at it as you're trying to run basically essentially like a hash. You're trying to run up the hashes, or you're trying to run a skinny post or a post, and you cut it back out to a corner. It's a flag route concept, guys. And then behind that, they're running these flats concepts. I saw this when I was watching one of the games earlier, and then I saw this on this Washington game as well, to where I was like, oh, okay, like, this is cueing me in that they have a specific design they're trying to go for. I don't particularly love this concept of the 7 flat. I think you need a certain look from the defense to take advantage of that, and I think the timing has to be perfect. And time again, when I'm watching them run the 7 flat, the timing's off a little bit. And even though there is space, I don't think that Jordan Love did the greatest job throwing to space and getting his receiver into like a big play opportunity there. So, I mean, it's going to depend, guys. I don't know how successful this shit's going to be, but I can see that this offense is way more vertical than I thought. And that's the thing is like when I originally was watching the Green Bay Packers offense and I was kind of watching, kind of the way that Matt LaFleur and stuff was playing, offense, a lot of the shit that I saw in there was a lot of like dump offs to the tight ends. That's definitely a part of it. Like they're going to work the tight ends. They're going to work the running backs. You're going to get a lot of like underneath stuff, right? Shit that's at the line of scrimmage or under it. You're going to get a lot of that shit from this offense, especially if we're running something that's going to be in the Matt LaFleur realm of things. There is a lot of that quick game shit, right? If you were to divide it up by the amount of throws that are going to take less than 2.5 seconds, we're probably going to see Jalen Hurts get sped up a little bit more like that. But if you look at the overall time to throw, there's a lot of vertical elements to this offense. And on top of there being a lot of vertical elements to this offense, there's a lot of play action. So you see that you're still going to be probably more than likely, guys, even if we speed Jalen Hurts up even a little bit more than what he was sped up last year, you're still probably looking somewhere in the 2.8s. Do I think Jalen Hurts is magic when you can get him into the 2.7s? I do. And by the way, you got to look at this as averages. That doesn't mean every game's going to be 2.8s, 2.9s. I'm sure there'll be games where they're going a lot more into the play action and the vertical shots, and they're going to be probably above 3 seconds in terms of the time to throw. There'll be other times where you're going to see them going to the true West Coast offense shit, and they're hitting a lot of these like, these drive routes that they run the wide drive and stuff like that, right? You'll see things like the Hank route, these West Coast staples. You'll see those. That's quick game shit. They'll probably be, 2.7, 2.6, 2.5 in that area. The average, though, guys. I think when you average this shit out, if you look over the years, it kind of like Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love and the way they were using this guy, I think you're going to see something that's going to be around the 2.8s is what I'm going to take a wild guess the time to throw is going to be. We'll see, though. I mean, we got to see everything kind of play its way out. These are all assumptions, to be fair. It's not like he has to come in here and he has to run Matt LaFleur's offense, right? We know he's going to probably, take from what he knows. He's going to borrow from what he sees, but they still, we have all the guys in the room together. All these guys in the room together are going to come up with what becomes the install of the offense, which then becomes the weekly game plans and how we, basically we attack these opponents. So we do got to lead the door a little crack that we could be missing the forest for the trees here, and perhaps they start off with the idea and they are borrowing heavy from Matt LaFleur, but that doesn't mean that's where it's going to end. We have to kind of see it here. And we know that the Philadelphia Eagles, just like the Green Bay Packers, there's going to be a solid amount of run game inside of this offense. Like the run game is going to reign supreme. If I was a betting man, I would probably bet on Saquon Barkley putting up some pretty damn big numbers this year, guys. I think that's where you're going to see a shit ton of production happen. I think Saquon Barkley is probably going to have a really, really big year on the 2026 season. I think if they don't plan on having him back for the long-term future, I think Saquon might be in for another one of those career-type years, guys. I would definitely watch that one. I think that one has a high probability of becoming true, is like the rate and utilization of Saquon Barkley could be incredibly high, not just in the run game, but in the pass game as well. Another guy I would watch out for to have one of those quasi like career years, and I don't mean like it's going to be the best of their career, but like in the upper tier of what their career has been, is Dallas Goedert. Just the way that they utilize tight ends in this offense, guys, I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas Goedert isn't around that 700-yard mark or even more. So like Saquon to me, Saquon having 3, 4, maybe even 500 yards receiving, it's possible. I don't think that's out of the realm of of norm. I would probably bank around 400 yards and not quite the 500-yard mark, but I wouldn't be necessarily like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming if Saquon got to 500 yards receiving, guys. But I do know that I think it's a pretty solid bet to bet on that if the Eagles are successful this year, Saquon, if you look at the all-purpose yards, he's going to be over 1,800 all-purpose yards. All-purpose basically meaning, guys, receiving and running put together. You're minusing special teams production from that. I definitely think he's going to be like one of these 1,800-yard, like all-purpose type backs. I think he's going to have that kind of production on the season. I think Devontae Smith is going to definitely be in for a really big season because he's going to be the bona fide number one. I think there'll be times where teams will do a lot to try to take that away, and it'll be up to this team to basically do some things to free Devontae up. They're going to have to be more proactive than they've been in the past. But I definitely think that like Devontae's going to have a really big year. Dallas Goedert's going to have a really big year. Saquon's going to have a really big year. And then I think it's going to be interesting to see who emerges past that. The Mekhi Lemons, the Eli Stowers, right? The Dontavian Wicks. There's a lot of guys with a lot of potential and a big gamble we're rolling with here. Those guys got to step up, man. one of these guys, it doesn't have to be all three of them, don't have to step up in 2026, but at least one of those guys, and it would be really helpful for the offense if two of those guys really stepped up big on the 2026 season. That's going to be like this other like really large looming topic that I don't think a lot of people are going to really like focus in on, but probably should focus in on, is like, who's the other guy that really steps up, like Hollywood Brown, any of these guys that were not, I prefer it be one of the young guys, right? Eli Stowers, Dontavian Wicks, Mekhi Leonard. I prefer it be one of the young guys and a dude that we have on a 1-year contract that's just a veteran rental who's still got some ability. He's a good player, damn good depth piece for the offense. A dude that could definitely take over a game. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if there's not one game on the season where like Hollywood Brown has like a 90, 100-yard game. That wouldn't shock me. But I mean, obviously we would hope by the end of the year, Hollywood Brown is not your second leading receiver. Unless look, if the offense is dynamic, I don't give a damn who it is. But I mean, ideally speaking, for the success of the Eagles offense into the future, you hope it's a Eli Stowers, a Mekhi Lemon, a Dontavian Wicks. You hope it's another guy like that steps up with Devontae, Dallas, and Saquon and kind of does it. I think you guys get what I'm saying here. All right, y'all. That's my thoughts on the vertical like element to this offense, is that there's a lot of like, you're going to see a lot of vertical stretch. You're going to see a lot of high-low concepts. And I wouldn't be shocked if we're not watching in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season and you guys go, hey, Steve, you remember when you brought up about that 7-corner kind of flat route? Holy shit, I think I saw that in the game. I think you're going to see a handful of those. They definitely seem to use that 2x2s, 1x3s, or 3x1s. Like they love to use that. They like to move and motion into it. You got to watch out for the 3x1s that turn into 2x2s, the 2x2s that turn into 3x1s. They do like to do that a lot in this offense. There's going to be a hell of a lot more motion than I think we've seen previously. Like, I would say the floor is going to be what we saw with Kellen Moore. You remember Kellen Moore was like kind of in the middle-ish of the pack? I think you're going to definitely, the bottom is going to be top 20. Top 20 in terms of your motion and movement rate. But I do think that there's going to be a mean or expectation that I have that it's going to be top 16. I don't know if it'll be top 10 in terms of movement and motion, but I'd be shocked if we were not like a top 16 team when it comes to motion and movement rates. And I think that's a separate video. I don't want to get into that too deep right now. But, hey, if you want to see more, if you want to have deeper conversations about the scheme and you're like, yo, don't leave us now that you started the conversation, I'll throw a video up here, guys, that kind of talks about some of this kind of stuff. And I'll throw you another one over here that also kind of talks about some of the scheme aspects of what we might see on this 2026 season. All right, y'all. I love and appreciate y'all so much. Thank you to you guys that are liking, commenting, and subscribing on the videos. And for all y'all that are hyping these videos up, hey, man, thank y'all so much, guys. I know you only get so many of these hypes, and if you guys are choosing to use them on videos that I'm creating, hey, man, there's a lot of guys that cover the Eagles, so I really do appreciate y'all for doing that, man. You're A1 in my books, guys. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.